What is up? Welcome to my OBS tutorial. So today I'm gonna take you through all the OBS things you need to know. This will be the ultimate guide, so you won't get lost in your OBS like, well, that's what I used to have when I just started out using it. It is quite a complicated program, but once you break it down step by step and section by section, it will become a very clear what you have to do with every section pretty much. So I use OBS on the daily, so I just wanted to share my knowledge with you guys out there that are struggling with using it, and I hope this will be of use to you. So without further ado, let's just get straight into this program you see on my right. Before we start out, you want to start with a blank slate. I'm going to tell you in a second how you're going to do this. Why do you want to do this? Mainly to not mess with what you have right now. It's always nice to have a backup that works. So if you currently have something you're using that doesn't work perfect, but it works, then make sure you keep that one and do not lose it because you're messing around with it, just in case this goes wrong. It's not supposed to go wrong. This should work for pretty much everyone. I'm gonna divide it into sections. So you have the lower specs, the mid spec range, and the high spec range. There's no setting that's gonna work for everyone. It really depends on your hardware in your computer, pretty much. First show you guys how you actually get a blank slate in OBS. So what you want to do is you want to go to profile over here, and as you can see I have a couple. I made a new one called test, so you just want to click new and name it whatever you want and then press OK. I already have one. I named this one test, and you want to do the same thing with scene collection. So scene collection is what you see right here. It's like your interface, pretty much. It's the mixer, the sources, the scenes, scene transitions. That is the scene collection. And then for profile, that is all your settings. So if you make a new profile, your settings will be fully reset, or well, it will be the new settings. And for scene collection, your scene, source, and mixer will be like reset or in a blank slate of that one. So you want to do both for this tutorial. Well, I would suggest doing both. It's in the end, it's up to you. But yeah, let's get on to our next point. So we're gonna start out with scenes all the way on the bottom left of the OBS screen. So right here, you see your scenes. So what scenes pretty much are? You should see scenes as sort of a map. They're like a map that contain your webcam, your game capture, your whatever you want to capture on your computer, maybe like sounds. They're all in a map. So your sources are your actual webcam, game capture, all that stuff, and scenes are different things you can switch between. Like what you're seeing right now, I have two OBSs open, as you can see. Like there's the one I'm recording with right now. So that one has a scene right now that is called display footage only, so that's why you're seeing my desktop, and I can switch to my facecam, for example, which is another scene. So I will show that also in a second. If I had to explain why you would use scenes, why not just use one scene to record your screen or your game? That's definitely possible. You could definitely do that if you want that. But you would use multiple scenes if you're gonna stream and you want to switch between your face cam and your game really easily, or you want to switch between different places, maybe your browser and your game, or it really depends on what you want to do with your OBS. But I'm just gonna rename this one to game capture, because that's what like most people use OBS for, to capture their games. Now I'm just gonna name it recording to make it easy, so that I'm gonna use this scene for if I'm gonna record something. So I would definitely make sure you name these to logical things. I know I want to use this one for recording now, but if I would name it ABC1, that wouldn't be very logical, I'd say. So let's add some sources to this record, or to this scene, because right now we just have a black screen. We're gonna start out with a game capture. You can make one for separate games, for every game there is. but I would just do a general game capture. So you could name this one general. So we're just gonna press OK, and then you get this screen. This is where it's get kind of like tricky. So capture any full screen application should do the trick, but you can also select a specific window so it doesn't switch between things. So for example, if I want to capture Fortnite is really popular at the moment. So let's do just a specific window. And you'll get options here. We don't have Fortnite open, so that's why it doesn't allow us to select Fortnite. So what we want to do is just open up Epic Games here, for example. Let it boot up for a second. All right, so as you can see, sometimes you just have to cancel it out and press it again. But yeah, as you can see, you can select the Fortnite window and it should just pop right on the screen. There we go. So, and if it doesn't, if you see a little red thingy in the corner, this is what some people have been struggling with. You just want to press transform and click fit to screen. So you want to right click your thingy and then press fit to screen. So what you can do with your sources, so from here you just want to add your like webcam. I'll take you through all the options first. So there's an audio input, audio output. I will get to that in a second. That is an extra audio option you can select if you want to. I personally use it. The mixer will default to being on always, and then you just have to mute it, and if it gets unmuted. So in some scenes I use no microphone, so it just won't capture my microphone when I'm like in that scene. Sometimes that's useful. It's like, I'm just gonna get through that like later on when I'm in the settings menu. But yeah, anyway, you want to have the audio input and output. So input is your microphone, output will always be your desktop sound. So you have your browser. So browser would be any link. So if I do, let's say I want to have a browser source of my YouTube for whatever reason. Usually you could use this for your live subscriber count. You could like crop that in and place it on screen somewhere, but I'm just going to take YouTube for an example. So what you can do here is type in YouTube or www.youtube.com. It will just load up YouTube and say I want to have maybe a thumbnail. You could hold your Alt key or Option key on Mac and then drag it down, and it should become a green thingy so you can just crop out whatever you want to have on the screen. So that's a browser source. That's also how you use stream applications like, so you want to go to streamlabs.com, and from there you can have like stream notifications on. That's mainly what people use browser sources for. You want to have your Streamlabs on, and I'll open my OBS real quick. So this is still capturing this. That's the nice thing about game capture. On my other OBS, so on this one I have my display capture, so it will capture everything I do on that display. I have two displays. But yeah, for a game capture, it will only capture that game exclusively. On Streamlabs, you have a couple of things, but the main thing people always want is stream alerts. So this will have notifications show up, donations, subscribers, all that stuff. So yeah, you can just copy the link here, and that link you can enter in your browser source. So you just click your browser, press your alert box, and every time something happens, so well, actually, I don't know why I named it that. It wasn't my intention. So you just want to name this like alerts, and then you double click it and enter the link. And then every time something happens, it will pop up right there. It automatically chroma keys it out for you, which is like remove the background. Usually it has like a green background. So yeah, every time something happens, it will pop up just there. So that's what you use browser for. There is a color source. I've personally never used it, gonna be honest. That could be useful if you want to show a color, I guess. There's a display capture, which is currently what I'm using. This is, you're seeing my display. Everything that happens on your display will be captured. So you just want to press it, press just display 1, and you can just capture whatever's on the display. So you want to, like, this is my second display, and this is the other display. I'm just gonna remove this for now, but you can use that to capture your full display. Could be useful if your game capture isn't working. Some people have that. I already explained game capture, so you can put an image on screen. This could be useful if you're using graphic art like your logo in your stream, or maybe you wanna, like the bar you see underneath me, that is also an image, or you could just pretty much put anything there that you want there. So yeah, it will just be like, you just select a file, that's it. It's that simple to get an image on screen. It's very useful to make your recording look good. You could also do an image slideshow, which could be used for tickers, for example. Tickers are like a message that gets displayed every now and again. I currently don't use it anymore. I used to have it on every recording and stream I did, but not anymore. Media source, that is what I use for showing my intro on screen. So if you want your intro to play or whatever file you have, so what you do is make a scene, and that is what I was talking about with the microphone thing. I'm saying the microphone thing, but yeah, you just want to have it disabled usually, which you do in settings. I'll show that in a bit. And then you want to have your audio input and output in every scene. You just have to make sure it's in every scene. I usually drag it to the bottom of my sources on that certain scene. It gets really complicated. I'm sorry if this is a bit messy, this part. This is where it gets more advanced, so just skip ahead if you think this is too much info. Just add a media source and you can just press that scene and it will, as you see, it will just display that without having my microphone play in the background. That is how that works. I'll just show it on screen real quick. So yeah, over here below, oh actually it's, as you can see over here, I have my microphone and my desktop sound. That is how that works. From there we had the media source, so there's a scene. You can have text displayed on screen. I'm not sure about scene. I'm just gonna skip through this. Video capture device is what you use for your webcam. So you want to do webcam. There we go. As you can see, it's not here. Make sure it's like fits the screen. But as you can see, it is just an empty thing. That's because I have it on my other OBS. So if you're not seeing it, just make sure you don't have another OBS open that has it active. From there, we're going to move on to the window capture. Is what you want to use to capture your browser, for example. But the window capture will pretty much do the same thing a game capture does, except it doesn't capture it full screen. It captures it like actually. Window capture is a bit outdated. I would avoid it. I would just try and use display capture or game capture, but window capture could be useful if you want to capture your browser, I guess. Let's move on to the mixer. So the mixer is pretty straightforward. You just see these audio bars for your desktop or whatever audio device you have active. You can just mute the sound on your thingy and on your desktop. Something to note here is that you can put filters on them. So you could put on like gain, make sure it's louder, but I wouldn't do that in OBS. It just gets complicated. I won't just do it on your computer itself. One thing to note is that these advanced properties are pretty important. For example, in your editing software, you want to have them separate, your microphone and your desktop sounds. Like you want to have those as separate bars. What you want to do then is make sure your desktop is on the second track and your microphone is on the first track. Make sure you have these all checked out, except for the first and the second for mic and audio. Also, make sure if you're in settings, I'm gonna get to this in a second. You never want to have this on simple. I will get to that in a second why, but you want to set it to advanced. Go to the recording tab and make sure your audio track is set to both of these. So you just want to have these both selected. The rest of the settings have to be different as well if you want to have the right settings. Yeah, just make sure these are checked if you want to have them separate in recording. But if you're going to switch back to streaming, that's why I have different scene collections for streaming and recording. Because if I would start streaming with these settings, you would only hear my microphone and not the desktop sounds. Because streaming always just takes one track. You can't stream with two tracks. So that is something to note. Make sure you use this just for recording if you're using that setting. So you just want to create a new scene collection and a new profile and have... That is, by the way, the alert that just played. But yeah, anyway. With the mixer out of the way, we can move on to the settings, I would say. If you plan on streaming, I'm just going to put this back to just the first track for both of these. We can move on to the general tab in the settings. So settings are over here. Exit just speaks for itself, but yeah, let's move on to settings. So general, in general, pretty much just leave it like it is. There's nothing really interesting going on here. Pretty much read what it says. It's pretty straightforward. What I would do, I think it starts out with the default team, so you have the white one. I just think the dark one looks way better, but that's personal preference. You could also go for a Cree or whatever you think looks good, but I'm personally a fan of the dark theme. Just make sure you have your language selected. It's also important. So let's move on to the streaming tab. This is a pretty important one. You have your streaming services. I wouldn't recommend going to custom streaming server. Well, if you do, then make sure you know what you're doing, because I have no clue how that works. I'm just going to be honest with that one. If you're streaming on Twitch, you want to just enter your stream key here. How you can find your stream key is a whole different story. I guess I could just show you on my own Twitch. All right, to get your stream key, you want to go to over here to your dashboard. And in your dashboard, you get a bunch of things to actually get your stream key. You have to go all the way down to channel, and then over here it says stream key. You can just click on that, show key. Make sure you don't show it on stream or whatever, because then people can mess with your stream. But yeah, you just show the key, you paste it in this little tab here, and that's how it works. On YouTube, it works a bit different. On YouTube, you kind of want to just go to your Creator Studio. And from your Creator Studio, you want to go to your live streaming thingy. I would say Stream Now is the most simple to set up. And then down here, you get your stream key. You just copy this, just Control C and Control V it in the tab over here to YouTube Gaming. Make sure primary is selected to have the main YouTube thingy, and then you can press apply. And if I would press start streaming now, it would just work. It would just instantly make sure it will just live stream whatever I have on the screen here. Back to the stream settings. So streaming, we covered that right now. You can also use Mixer or whatever you want. Output. This is the most important tab you're gonna have on your OBS. So this is what determines how laggy your stream is, how smooth it is, how whatever. Like, this is gonna be the quality of your streaming. So you want to go to your advanced tab. You have a separate recording and streaming tab, also an audio tab, but I would just leave this alone. What I noticed is some people are like, oh, you want to stream with your CPU. It is very important you select your CPU. What I found is that your CPU is not the best part of your computer unless you have a really shitty GPU, and GPU would be your video card. So I would really suggest not using X264. It will really cause lag if you don't have the best of the best computer. I would suggest going for NVENC or the other one that's there. There's also one for AMD, I'm pretty sure. So you want to go with NVENC or AMD depending on what graphics card you have. So yeah, I'm just going to show how these settings work. There's also, like, as you can see, it changes depending on what you use. I would just go with NVENC. I'm going to show you how my settings work. If you disagree and you want to use the CPU, go ahead, but that's not what I'm going to show in this tutorial. This is also the encoder you would use for rendering, for example, in Premiere Pro or Sony Vegas for that matter. So don't rescale your output unless you want to make it smaller. Well, that's usually what you do in the video tab, so just don't really mess with the rescale output. I would say don't check it, just leave it as it is. Make sure you have the Infor streaming service encoder settings checked. Control rate, you just want to keep it as CBR. CBR will be more compressed. You could also do lossless if you have an extremely good computer, but I wouldn't recommend it. It just takes up a lot of your CPU as well. And bitrate, that really depends on what you're streaming in. So now we're gonna get into more details, so you wanna just make sure you know kind of what computer you have. If you have a lower tier computer, so you're using a laptop or whatever, I would recommend going for so the video tab and the output tab kind of go hand in hand. First, let's just go over the settings. So what you wanna do is just Google YouTube bitrate settings. So if you Google that, the second one, so you just wanna have this one, live encoder settings. So this is the important one. So if you have a really like lower tier PC, you want to go with your 480p. It doesn't look the best, but at least you're able to stream, I guess. Then if you have a kind of a mid tier, you want to go with 720. So like a gaming laptop could probably handle 720. And then if you have a pretty decent desktop, I would just go with 1080-60, which is the settings I'm going to use. I'm just going to take the one for 1080-60, which is just full HD. That's what 1080-60 means, and it will have 60 frames, which is just not laggy at all. So we're just gonna have to go with 4,000 to 9,000 bit rate. That depends really on your internet. If you want to use 9,000 kilobits per second, you need to be able to do it with your internet speed. So if you don't know your internet speed, just do speedtest.net. Try a new speed test. All right, there we go. 86.9 megabits per second, which translates to, so you want to translate it from megabits per second to kilobits per second. This is pretty much all you need to know, your megabits per second. So let's Google Mbps to kbps, and it translates to 78,330 kilobits per second. So that is what I can use, but then I would use all my internet. I was in front of it. Sorry about that. Just look up these live encoder settings. It's really useful. As you can see, I could use 9,000 per second if I wanted to, so I'm just gonna do that for the best quality. CBR and keyframe interval, I would suggest make it 2. You could also just leave it 0 if you're not sure about this, but I've heard 2 works the best, and that works for me. For preset, I would say default. Default just worked the best for me so far, so I would recommend just using default. Some say high quality works better for them, but that's just for you to test out. I would just suggest using default. And if it doesn't work, you could always try high quality. But profile, just go with main. Level, just go with auto. Just don't mess too much with that. 2-pass encoding, make sure that is checked. GPU and B frames, just leave that as the basic. That is what I noticed works best. Unless you really know what you're doing, then you can probably tweak it a little bit. For recording, you just want to make sure you have audio track 1 selected if you're gonna, I already covered that earlier, so I'm just not gonna cover that again. You want to make sure you have it to MP4 unless you really want to have it as a MOV or whatever. I would suggest just going MP4. Nice and easy, compact format. Make sure the recording path is logical. So I, for example, have my YouTube studio where I keep it in my OBS footage map. Type just standard encoder. Make sure you have your NVEC selected here as well. Rescale output not necessary. So for recording, you can just use unlimited bitrate because recording doesn't use your internet. So, but I would suggest using like 26,000 or something. That will make sure your quality is fine and dandy. Keyframe interval again 2, and the rest can be left as it is. So that is how you use the recording tab. Streaming tab is all set up now as well perfectly, and then we can move on to the audio tab, which I'm just gonna say leave this as it is. But there was one thing I wanted to show you guys, which was what I was talking about earlier in the video. You want to keep this at disabled, and then if you press apply and press OK, as you can see, it's gone. The mixer is gone now, which is what I was talking about when I played the intro, if you remember. When I play the intro, I don't want to have my microphone running, so you don't hear me talking whilst the intro is playing. So what you want to do to create this effect is create an audio output. I guess you could name it output. I just call it desktop to make it easier. Desktop sound, and then you want to select your whatever speaker you're using. But as you can see now, my desktop sound is on the mixer, and then if I wanted, I could add my microphone here as well, which I'm just going to call microphone, and just call it that. And then as you can see, my microphone showed up as well. So that is how that works. It's nice and easy, but just remember when you create a new scene, just gonna call it scene 2 for this one, it will like get rid of your mixer again. So you have to do this in every scene. Make sure but you can just press add existing. Do the same for your output wherever you want it. But that's how you customize every scene for itself. So we're gonna switch back to this one. By the way, scene transitions, you can switch to cut and fade also. So it just cuts or switches with a fade. Personal preference, of course. That is all you need to know about the audio tab. There's not much else you need to cover here. For video tab though, this is very important. Make sure your base canvas is whatever your base resolution is. It's usually set to whatever your screen is, and just keep it at the default, I would say. But the output is what your stream is gonna see. So if you're streaming on Twitch, you want to probably go with 720. Actually, no, I think Twitch uses 1080 now, so you could just go with 1080. But as you recall, I set my bitrate for 9000, which was the 1080-60 setting. But if you're going with a lower setting because your computer can't handle 1080, then just click your 1080-720 or your 852-480, depending, like I said, on what hardware you have. We're just gonna go with this one for this tutorial and go with length source. Video tab also, by the way, counts for your recording. So you will now also record in 1080. And then for your frames per second, you could go 30 or 60. I wouldn't really recommend going like 50 or something. We just covered that. There's hotkeys you can work with. Just mess around with that a little bit. The main thing is switch the scene. So what I always do is numpad 0 and numpad 1. Just have that as hotkeys. You can make like a zoom in on your face or something. I'll just show you. I can switch between these with my hotkeys. Yeah, that's just easy switching between scenes with hotkeys. Hotkeys are nice to mess around with, but I'm just gonna leave that up to you. For your advanced tab, there's not really anything you wanna mess with here except for maybe delay. If you wanna not get stream sniped or something and you wanna have a certain delay, you could enable this, I guess. All right, so now I'm pretty sure we covered everything there is in OBS. Well, yeah, your start recording and start streaming button are obviously separate buttons, and you wanna use those if you want to. But yeah, this was my OBS Studio guide. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you guys for watching. As you can see, this is something you can do. You can, like, there's an image over here. Just get creative with it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If it was useful to you, leave a like rating. If you need any help, leave it down in the comments. I'm glad to help. I will try to reply as soon as I can. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Check out some of my other videos. Over here is one good example that could be useful to you. So yeah, my OBS guide. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye, everyone.